My 48-year-old mom is in a toxic relationship and says, "You guys understand why I did that, right?" After kicking my sister out with nowhere to go. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in anxiety and OCD, feeling like a burden. Will I ever escape this house? I apologize for the lengthy message. I am a 17-year-old female, and my mother is a 48-year-old female. My parents divorced in early 2020 after being married for 22 years, and my siblings and I anticipated it. They never shared a bed, I rarely saw them kiss, and I think I witnessed them hug only once when my mother learned that my grandmother had cancer, and it was not even a complete hug, it was just a side hug. My father exemplifies narcissistic behavior. He was rarely present, and when he did work, his hours were long. On the occasions he was home, I had to plead for him to spend the day with me. After the divorce, things became chaotic, and I have not seen or spoken to my father since Christmas of 2021, leaving me with essentially only one parent now. I have two siblings. One is a 19-year-old non-binary individual and the other is a 26-year-old female. Since the divorce, my mother has been behaving differently. In early 2021, my mother informed my sibling and me that she would start using dating apps just to make friends. I told her that no one uses dating apps solely for friendship. I was only 13 at the time, but I was not naive. She would attempt to justify her decision by saying that a friend of hers had done it, but neither my sibling nor I accepted her reasoning. It was not her dating again that troubled me, it was the outright dishonesty. In February 2021, she began to really connect with a man, and she started video calling him frequently and leaving to meet him. My sibling and I had just emerged from some of the darkest moments in our lives, so we were rather numb and not very present during that time. Eventually, her attention shifted away from us. However, she assured us that she would not bring anyone over to our house. Before long, her claim of using a dating app strictly to make friends and her promise of not bringing anyone into our lives turned out to be false. She started inviting this man into our home while my sibling and I isolated ourselves in our rooms. I began to dissociate at that point. Since I had no other male figures in my life apart from my father, I found men intimidating. She started to keep him over late, sometimes until 2 or 3 a.m. due to past trauma and issues I have had since childhood. I have difficulty sleeping, and now with a stranger in the house, I could not sleep at all. One night, he was at our home until nearly 3 a.m. and I still could not fall asleep, so I texted my mother to ask when he would leave. She responded with something along the lines of soon. Why? I did not reply. After all, I had been in an ongoing state of panic about this man being in the house for several hours because I could not sleep. The next day when I entered her room to see her, I said, "Good morning." And she replied, "Why did you ask when blank was leaving?" in a passive-aggressive tone. I explained how I could not sleep and felt uncomfortable with him around. In response, she said, "Well, you need to talk to your therapist about that and fix it." Her tone was somewhat stern, although I have always been quite sensitive, so perhaps that was just me. It did hurt. In that moment, it felt like my mother was not herself, but I moved past it. My older sister has lived independently since 2016 and has relocated to another state, so I do not see her as often as I used to. My sister experienced significant difficulties growing up, so I do not blame her for leaving right after turning 18. At that time, she was going through a challenging period, and my mother asked if she would like to stay with us after we had moved away from my father. My mother informed me that she simply told her, "Let me take care of you." Their relationship was extremely unstable, thus this was a considerable step forward, but to summarize, it turned out poorly. My mother began behaving like a sobbing teenager in love for the first time, complete with a victim complex. One incident drastically changed my perception of my mother. After a fight, she kicked my sister out even though my sister had just endured a highly traumatic day. I won't go into specifics, but in my opinion, it was absolutely not justified. My mother made my sister leave, knowing that she had no friends in the area as she had just returned to the state. She had no family members to contact, no money, and no place to sleep. I felt frozen as I watched the entire situation unfold before my eyes. I remembered feeling like I was 6 again as I watched this unfold in our old home. My sibling offered my sister all their savings and I offered her my card, but she turned it down. After my sister left, sobbing with her belongings, I looked over to see my mother crying on the couch, asking, "You guys understand why I did that, right?" I had no answer other than that it was entirely inappropriate. I ended up sitting in my room and stepping onto the roof outside to get some fresh air. This roof was part of the garage, and I heard my mother changing the garage code so that my sister could not return, and I was horrified. Never in my life had I witnessed someone being so utterly cruel to their own child, especially one they claimed to care for, right before my eyes. Another fight occurred just before we were set to take a summer trip to visit family, resulting in only my mother and I going, while my sibling opted out. During that trip, I felt incredibly lonely and embarrassed to have her as a mother. She would leave family gatherings to video call her boyfriend and talk about herself to anyone willing to listen. When we visited Disneyland, she withdrew a significant sum of money from the divorce settlement and made me wait for an hour outside the store on my own while she spent money on items for her boyfriend and his child. My feet hurt intensely during that time, and I wanted to go home. The entire Disneyland trip was ruined because she did not want to stand in line with me and ignored me to communicate with her boyfriend continually. To top it all off, despite having that much money, she made me then 13 pay for all my own belongings. It was a wasted trip. Following our return, nothing improved. Whenever we mentioned her boyfriend, she would drop us off at a location and leave, or if we attempted to set boundaries, she would cry and claim that we did not want her to be happy. My sister only stayed for about half a year before leaving to return to her previous state. Before the fall semester, my mother discussed the possibility of sending me and my sibling to a charter school, which initially seemed appealing. However, after looking up the specific school, the reviews were terrible. I told my mother that I wanted to try going to public school instead, as I had always dreamed of attending football games and participating in homecoming and prom, events that the charter school did not offer at that time. She became upset and labeled me a spoiled brat. I was confused since she had not enrolled us in school yet, and public school would not incur any costs like the charter school would. Thankfully, she eventually relented. I started high school that fall and had never been more grateful for school. With the COVID-19 pandemic and the divorce, I had only one friend and we had drifted apart, so high school was a much-needed change from being trapped in that house. My sibling attended the charter school, and it proved to be just as unfavorable as the reviews suggested. I made friends who lived nearby and took the bus with me, frequently going out with them to avoid being at home. Eventually, due to health issues, I had to switch to online schooling, leading me back to the house. During Christmas 2021, my mother had exhausted the divorce settlement funds and informed us that we would not receive gifts that year. My sibling and I did not desire anything, so this was not a significant concern for us. We have a family game we play with relatives out of state, so they sent it to us and requested that we record our gameplay for them to view. Before pressing record, my mother announced that she needed to share something with us. She was engaged. She expressed, "I hope you guys can be happy for me. You can see the ring if you'd like." My sibling and I were stunned into silence. She assured us that she did not intend to get married or have him move in. This turned out to be yet another blatant lie she told to placate herself, knowing we felt uncomfortable. I wanted to feel happy for her, but witnessing how she treated my siblings because she liked this man frustrated me. It was not her entering a new relationship that unsettled me. Rather, it was her saying, "Oh, this won't happen," instead of taking the time to discuss how we could navigate this new chapter in our lives, as it was clearly happening. She proceeded to record after that, and I can only imagine how awkward the footage must have looked. That Christmas also marked the last time I spoke to my father. He called to wish me a Merry Christmas and then proceeded to engage in his usual gaslighting behavior about me not visiting him. I became so fed up with the day as a whole that I simply told him, "If you do not have anything nice to say to me, I do not want to talk to you." In classic narcissistic fashion, his ego was hurt, and he hung up on me. 3 days later, he called the police for a welfare check, claiming nobody was responding to him, despite the fact that he had not reached out to anyone since Christmas. Thus, as my Christmas gift from the world, I received two parents testing my patience. As you can likely predict, that man and my mother eventually married and he moved in. I zoned out then, and I continue to be emotionally detached to this day. I developed very strong obsessive-compulsive disorder tendencies. I avoid touching anything outside of my room. I wash my hands approximately 10 to 14 times a day without exaggeration, and I wear different clothes to walk outside my room, changing back into my old clothes upon returning. My conditions have worsened, and my eating issues have significantly deteriorated my health. So you could say I am not doing very well. I started feeling like I was a burden to my mother. Perhaps I was being overly picky or too sensitive. I felt like an anchor preventing her from moving forward with her life. Sometimes I sense that she sees my father in me and resents me for it. For context, I am of mixed race and she is white. She occasionally makes comments like the time I went to our backyard to tan, as I tend to get pale in the winter. When I returned inside, my mother remarked that I looked dirty. Sometimes, when I feel like I am being difficult, I worry that I remind her of my father. I cannot fathom what it is like to endure a loveless marriage for so long, let alone an abusive relationship, yet I cannot shake the feeling that she might have been happier had she never had children with him. I frequently observe her happiness in moments when neither my siblings nor I are present. I often wonder if she hates me. She consistently told my sibling and me that we did not need to contact anyone from his family, including ours. I appreciated this because the thought made me quite uncomfortable. However, around the time she planned to host a little reception at our house, she suddenly began calling them her family and insisted that I needed to get to know them. It took all my courage to tell her that I was not going to do that. I typically start sobbing when discussing my feelings. She did not seem to care, prompting me to retreat to my room and cry for an hour. Around the time my mother got married, she developed kidney stones. She experienced significant pain, had difficulty moving, and needed a lot of help. Eventually, the stones passed. However, the pain never fully subsided, and currently they suspect she is experiencing non-epileptic seizures that render her body numb and fatigued, sometimes making her feel fragile. I do not recall if she specified an exact name for the condition, but it has taken over her life. She is now around 65% immobile and must use crutches or a walker. Additionally, she had to go on disability at her job and park in handicapped spaces because she cannot walk far. She has always been a busy person who enjoys keeping herself occupied and working. Thus, when she had to go on disability, I think she may have started to lose control. Now her primary conversation topic is her pain or her apologies for being unable to get up and complete tasks or how she needs us to assist her. While this is understandable as she is struggling and requires support, she often brings it up at the most unexpected moments. For instance, when I was discussing obtaining a job, she exclaimed, "Yeah, I used to love working, but now I just can't. I can only take a deep breath and move forward because what else can I say?" Or when I am discussing making cookies, she might say, "Oh, I used to love baking cookies. I wish I still could, but I am just in so much pain now and can't even stand." Then she would go on and forget that I was even talking to her. She once despised smoking and the smell of cigarettes while I was growing up, but now she smokes marijuana, cigarettes, and vapes inside the house, which I find unpleasant. I realize that she uses it for pain relief. She has begun making marijuana-infused cookies, acquiring items she can no longer utilize because she is unwell. She recently adopted 2 more dogs. We previously had 5 animals, and insisted she would take care of them herself. However, with her present condition, she now constantly requests assistance with the dogs due to their high energy levels, which is expected as they are an energetic breed. She continuously asks for things and help, and I cannot shake the overwhelming guilt I feel when I occasionally grow annoyed by it. Throughout my life, she has never truly functioned as a mother. When I would visit friends' homes and communicate with their parents, it felt like a stark awakening. Their parents would express genuine concern and inquire more about me in a few hours than my mother has in several months. I adored visiting other households as it provided me with a glimpse of what a healthy family dynamic could feel like. Granted, I might only have been there for a single day, but you understand my point. I often find myself feeling deeply envious of those who share a close relationship with their parents because I can feel my connection with my mother gradually diminishing. She does not ask me about my future aspirations. When I share my goals with her, she either appears indifferent or cannot recall them. I am so exhausted from being invalidated or feeling the need to apologize for her hurting my feelings. Yes, I am sensitive, but it is incredibly frustrating when I am trying to advocate for myself and establish boundaries, only to have my mother be the first to undermine my efforts. I will admit that I am gullible, as when she is kind, I tend to forget every negative experience I have had with her. Am I being unkind? Am I being overly dramatic? I simply desire peace. I do not want to be in constant conflict with my mother. I do not have many extended family members to turn to after the divorce. I have attempted to act maturely and converse with her about setting boundaries, but she never appears willing to listen. This makes me feel as though she does not care. I worry about becoming an adult without a support system. I currently do not have friends, so I have been feeling lonely. I experience severe anxiety, and being confined in this house feels like I am drowning in my own sorrow. I apologize if this message seems disorganized. I simply needed to express my feelings. Story 2. For 20 years, I was stuck in my own head, battling relentless anxiety and obsessive thoughts. I felt like I was broadcasting my struggles, but went unnoticed until a therapist said, "You should get evaluated for ADHD." Now, for the first time, I'm finally unstuck. What changed? For over 20 years, I lived trapped inside my own mind, stuck in survival mode, spiraling through endless anxiety and obsessive thoughts. This is the story of how I finally found clarity, broke free, and experienced life for the first time. This is the first time I have ever opened up about any of this, and honestly, never in my life did I imagine putting my real name to something like this. However, after carrying it for so long, it felt like the right time to stop hiding from it. For most of my life, I believed I was broken, anxious, obsessive, lost inside my own head. The only word I ever really had for it was that I felt trapped. A few weeks ago, everything changed. Have you ever experienced a moment when your body went into pure survival mode and your mind never fully returned? My anxiety began almost immediately after my grandfather passed away. I was 11 years old. When he died, something inside me broke, but it was not until I had a near-choking incident that I felt as if I completely lost control of my mind. Even though I did not fully choke, I was overwhelmed with fear and terror. My dad was mowing the lawn and my mom was shopping for groceries, so I was home alone. Somehow I managed to dislodge the food from my throat, and almost immediately after regaining my breath, my dad walked through the door. That moment triggered something deeper. It was as if my brain switched into permanent survival mode and it never returned to normal. Little did I know that single incident would lead to what became an internal hell for over 20 years. I developed an intense fear of eating. I was genuinely frightened. It was not just when I was sitting down to a meal, I would think about it repeatedly. It reached a point where it consumed my thoughts. My mind was stuck in a constant what-if loop. It lasted for months, and the loop was not just 2 or 3 times a day. It was incessant, with my mind racing at a million miles an hour every second of the day. This made concentrating on anything nearly impossible. It felt as though I was drowning in my own mind. I was completely trapped. This is what I began to call these obsessive thoughts being stuck. One thing led to another and the obsessive thoughts began to spiral. It was no longer just about the fear of eating. Anything that had the slightest emotional impact on me could trigger an episode. I recall being in school once when we were discussing cancer. My teacher mentioned something along the lines of, "One day you could wake up and have a brain tumor." That single statement sent me into a year-long spiral, not just worrying that I had a brain tumor, but absolutely convinced that I did. It was not on and off, it was constant. It became my only thought at all times. I could not concentrate on anything else because I was essentially holding my brain hostage literally every second of the day. Every headache, every sensation, every peculiar thought, I was sure it indicated that something was wrong. It hijacked my entire life, and that is just one example. It did not stop after that. Every few weeks or months, a new obsession emerged, a new fear, a new worst-case scenario, and my brain would latch onto it as if it were a matter of life or death. This cycle continued for over 20 years. The fears would shift, but the spiral was always there. My brain never gave me a break. This was not something that just happened to me, it was who I had become. A child trapped inside his own head, fighting battles that no one else could even see. What still amazes me is this. I cannot believe nobody outside of my family ever noticed, at least not that I was aware of. Not really. Not fully. I became so adept at hiding it that even the people closest to me only ever saw the surface, the jokes, the distractions, the small glimpses I allowed them to see. But beneath it all, I was drowning. And somehow nobody recognized just how deep it went. My parents were the only ones who ever attempted to understand. They witnessed me suffering, lashing out, screaming, crying, telling them that I felt like I was going insane. They felt powerless. I often tried to explain how it felt as though I had different songs stuck in my head at all times, all day, every day. The only time I got any relief was when I fell asleep. Then I would wake up, rinse, and repeat. I was convinced that everyone was judging me constantly. In reality, I was just insecure because these obsessive thoughts were such an integral part of me that I could not comprehend how people could not see it. It felt as though it had to be obvious. It felt as though I was broadcasting it somehow, even when I was not. From everyone else's perspective, I was just a typical kid. But the truth is, I carried it alone. My parents did everything they could. I remember them spending thousands trying to help me, therapists, psychiatrists, whatever they thought might assist me. They even attempted hypnotherapy because by that point, I was so scared to eat that I could go days without consuming anything at all. Eventually, they took me to a psychiatrist who failed to identify what was actually wrong. They simply prescribed me antidepressants such as Paxil, Effexor, and Celexa. I was still just a child. When I tried to discontinue those medications, the withdrawal symptoms were so severe that doctors compared it to heroin detox. The medications did not fix me, they either numbed me, made me angry, or made me feel unhealthily invincible, which only intensified my desire to fight. It was not strength, it was instability. I was no longer myself. There were also teachers in school who did not know how to handle it. Some would seat me at the back of the classroom with headphones, while the teacher wore a microphone so that their voice could go directly into my ears. That is how poor my focus was. And it was not due to a lack of effort, it was because my mind was trapped. I was stuck in endless cycles of fear and obsession, and anything requiring real thought or attention felt impossible. At school, I became skilled at concealing it. One of the primary ways I coped was through humor. Cracking jokes and making people laugh became my crutch. It made me feel normal. It provided me with a sense of belonging, at least for a few minutes. Making others laugh was not merely a habit, it was a vice that enabled me to keep going. But beneath it all, I was trapped, living in survival mode while everyone else simply lived. I did not even recognize it at the time, but looking back, that is precisely what it was. Engaging with people, especially new acquaintances, caused immense anxiety. While trying to hold a conversation, I would overthink every single word. And job interviews. Imagine trying to leave a strong impression while an entirely separate conversation was occurring inside your own head. It felt as if someone was speaking directly into both of my ears while I was desperately trying to concentrate. It was absolutely surreal, but it was my reality. It was all I had ever known. My best friend witnessed more of it than anyone outside of my family, but even he did not know the full extent. Most people did not. The obsessive thoughts never fully disappeared, they consumed me. They were the last thing I thought about before falling asleep and the first thought upon waking. Some obsessions would take control for days, even months at a time, looping and spiraling until I could not even remember what it felt like to think about anything else. The eating issues began to ease around 16 years old, but the anxiety simply shifted to other issues. In my 20s, it appeared in waves instead of being constant. That felt like an improvement, but it was still hell. It was actually a significant reason I left college the first time. Mentally, I was overwhelmed, and underlying that was a great deal of frustration and anger directed at myself. I was frustrated that I needed medication just to function somewhat, and even then, it felt like I was only operating at a fraction of who I knew I was meant to be. I eventually returned and completed my studies, but at that time I was not ready. For most of my life, I simply accepted this as normal. I assumed that this was just who I was: anxious, obsessive, broken. It shattered my confidence in ways I did not comprehend until recently. It was not merely a matter of feeling inadequate, I genuinely believed it. Even in the smallest moments, conversations, schoolwork, anything, I lived with imposter syndrome. People around me would tell me I was intelligent, successful, even impressive at times, but I could not internalize any of it. Internally, I was a wreck, and no amount of praise could alter that reality. It was as straightforward as that. Until about 6 months ago, I reached out to an old therapist I had not seen in years. I recounted everything. The first question she asked me was, "Have you ever been evaluated for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder?" I was perplexed because I was not hyper. I had always assumed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder meant bouncing off walls, and no one had ever mentioned it to me before. Throughout my entire life, I had received treatment for anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder, medicated with antidepressants in various forms, but no one ever investigated further. In hindsight, it is clear that those diagnoses were real, but they were rooted in undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder the entire time. That is when she told me, "I would bet anything that you have inattentive type attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. You should get evaluated." It took me a few months to act on it. I do not know if it was fear, doubt, or sheer exhaustion, but I sat with it for a while. Eventually, I made an appointment with my doctor. After a few more months of discussions, I finally received a prescription for Adderall XR. Honestly, I anticipated becoming a nervous wreck on it, especially because I have always been sensitive to caffeine. Even a small amount of coffee would make my heart race and induce anxiety. I expected Adderall to have the same effect, perhaps worse. But it did not. It brought a calm I had never experienced before. For the first time in my life, my brain was quiet. It has only been about 20 days, but it feels as if a light switch has been flipped. After 20 years, my brain, which had been dormant my whole life, has finally turned on. I can stay present. I can concentrate on one thought at a time. I can genuinely absorb what I hear and read instead of it bouncing off of me. I am no longer spinning off into worst-case scenarios every minute. It is the strangest, most incredible sensation I have ever felt. And the remarkable thing is, I always knew there was more within me, but my brain would not permit me to reach it. Now, for the first time, it feels like I am genuinely experiencing what life is meant to feel like. Honestly, what I am sharing here barely scratches the surface. I could elaborate for hours about the various obsessions, the different fears, the myriad ways my brain convinced me I was in danger when I was not. This may seem lengthy, but compared to what I actually lived, it is just a glimpse. I do not even know where I currently stand regarding my anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder. It is as if they have vanished overnight. At this moment, I am more fixated on this new normal because it is completely foreign to me. And honestly, I am afraid it is temporary. It feels too good to be true. I have even attempted to obsess over things I normally would, which sounds crazy, right? And I cannot. I can merely move on. It is utterly astonishing to me. Another thing I cannot overlook. I feel as though I have experienced an intellectual leap overnight. It is as if the dormant part of my brain has awakened and become a sponge for information. Everything I am told, I remember. It is not a photographic memory, but it feels like I finally have complete access to who I have always been beneath the surface. However, since it has only been about 20 days and I am still adjusting to the medication, I am cautiously optimistic. Any anxiety I currently experience is more physical than anything else. For instance, sometimes my heart will race, and a few weeks ago that would have sent me into a complete internal breakdown. Externally, no one would have known. As I mentioned, I have become adept at masking it. But internally, it would have been complete chaos. The other day it happened. I looked at my Apple Watch and my heart rate was elevated, but I literally told myself I am fine. 21 days ago, that moment would have unraveled me internally. I also recognize there is significant stigma surrounding Adderall. I am not here to claim it was my miracle drug. I am still taking antidepressants as well, Prozac. But now, for the first time, I genuinely have hope that I can eventually discontinue them. Because even while being on them previously, I would still spiral constantly. Doctors have told me, and I am doing my best to believe it, that the reality is Adderall did not change who I am. It gave me access to who I have always been. I fought too hard for this clarity to ever feel weak for utilizing the appropriate tools. I am not masking anything, I am finally living without chains, and that is more than I ever thought possible. For the first time in my life, I am unstuck. I am still figuring all of this out, but for the first time I am not trapped inside my own head, and for now that is enough. The incredible part is, even writing all of this down is something I do not think I could have accomplished a month ago. For so long my mind was too overwhelmed, too scattered, too stuck to organize anything like this. The fact that I can even share this now is proof that something genuine has changed. I do not know who needs to read this, I simply know I needed to share it. I am not certain what sharing this will ultimately accomplish, but after carrying it alone for so long, I am finally ready to share it. Thank you for reading. Story 3. I can beat you cause you're just a girl, said Darnell, a bully who was terrified of what I might do. As class president, I fought for the misfits but never expected our chaotic wedding gag would spiral into toxic drama. Was I the hero or just part of Darnell's mess? Hello Reddit, I am Weirdo, obviously not my real name. I am entering grade 9 this year, the third year in our junior high school system here in the Philippines. I have always been an introvert ever since I was a child, however that has never prevented me from being an academic achiever. To be honest, I care more about my grades than love or relationships. Teenagers should focus on that anyway, right? My life changed when I switched schools after graduating from elementary school. We have grades 1-6 for elementary and 7-10 for junior high school here. My family wanted me to be more social. Like, what is so wrong with being an introvert? But yes, I was still young and just went along with it. At my new school, I made a best friend and for a while everything felt good. I even ended up as the vice president of my class that first year and was later promoted to class president. We refer to it as mayor in grade 8. So yes, I did socialize and take on responsibility. However, not everything was fantastic. You know how in every class there are those kids who get picked on just for being different, like the ones who randomly ask, "Do you have games on your phone?" Yes, at my school, which is a Catholic school, those kids get bullied. Verbally. It is either body shaming or teaching a child with autism really inappropriate things. It is disgusting. As class mayor, I felt compelled to take action. Who on earth teaches a child with autism dirty jokes and encourages him to be annoying on purpose? It is cruel. Then there is this guy, let's call him Darnell, who was being body shamed. He wasn't even that big. One day during our sports club session, he said he wanted to try out for the swimming team. This group of boys in our class, led by their so-called leader, laughed and said, "You will just float on the water." Like seriously, what kind of ridiculous comment is that? It was humiliating and nobody intervened. That was when I raised the issue with our advisor, especially regarding the body shaming. I could not just let that slip by. Anyway, that is just part of what I have experienced as a student leader and as someone who continues to believe in doing what is right, even when others remain silent. Thank you for reading. I truly needed to express this. After I reported everything to my advisor, she addressed the entire class about the issue. But let's be honest, justice does not always prevail. I was trying to stand up for the kids who were being picked on, but the culture does not change overnight. One day, my friends, we had just become close that year, and I saw Darnell crying. I asked him what was wrong and tried to say something comforting or motivational. Honestly, I do not even remember what I said, but I just wanted him to feel supported. That moment inspired me to suggest something small yet significant. I said, "Hey, how about we create a group chat for our friend group?" Everyone was on board. And yes, it was my idea. We initially struggled to come up with a name for the group chat, but when I got home and created it, I chose something random that still meant a lot to me from childhood: Handsome Squidward. Yes, I was a SpongeBob kid. Everyone accepted it. That group chat became our little space to have fun, laugh, and support each other. 4 of us were even the academically gifted kids, you know, high honors and everything. We were more than just a group, we were a team. Most of the kids in our group chat were not particularly academic achievers, so we, the honor students, had to remind them of homework as if we were their second brain or something. But we did not mind. We had that kind of bond. To make things more enjoyable, we gave ourselves SpongeBob-themed nicknames in the group chat. Mine, I was Mermaid Man. Obviously, it fit me perfectly. Then came this joke that escalated into absolute chaos in the best way. We started pretending that Darnell was getting married to his best friend Samuel, not his real name, but he once told us he was almost named that, so we ran with it. In our SpongeBob alternate universe, Darnell was Mr. Krabs and Samuel was Mrs. Puff. Don't ask how it started, but we were deep into the lore. It was just our way of escaping the nonsense happening at school. We created this silly little world, and in that world we supported one another. It all began at church, you know, Catholic school things. We have First Friday Mass every month. My best friend and I were sitting there just chatting when she shared the most random dream ever. I had to finish a mission, but the mission was to ruin a wedding. We were laughing hysterically, like, girl, what? But that dream actually inspired us. We thought, wait, what if we made a fake wedding just for fun? And that is when we decided to plan one for our group chat. We picked Darnell and Samuel, fake names, of course, as the bride and groom. And just so you all know, both Samuel and I are gay, and this entire fake wedding turned into the queerest, funniest, most chaotic thing ever. I was the best woman, the host, and the planner. I was booked and busy. I ensured everything was perfect, like a true girl boss gay aunt. So after all that chaos, which was pure slay, we had everything ready. The fake wedding was planned to perfection. We had the guests, the roles, the graphics, and even the save the dates. It was going to be legendary. But then, Darnell started sending messages in the group chat expressing that he felt Samuel was slipping away from him. And to be clear, nothing like that had actually occurred yet. Samuel was not ignoring him or anything, but Darnell was spiraling seriously. He kept saying things like, I do not think he likes me as much anymore, and we were like. So we did what real friends do. We tried comforting him, telling him, no dude, that is not true, and that Samuel still cared about him just the same. We were not trying to ruin anything. It was a joke wedding between two best friends, not the end of a friendship. So the wedding plans continued. We never actually paused them. We were just having fun, creating silly content on Canva, planning roles, sending invites, and so on. There was even this one hilarious moment where Darnell literally ran away from us at school because he was nervous about the wedding. We had to chase him across campus, shouting things like, come back, you are the groom, while other students stood there confused about what was happening. Pure chaos, honestly, one of those memories that will always remain funny. But then things started to change. Darnell began acting strangely in the group chat, making comments such as, I feel like Samuel does not like me anymore, and you all are replacing me. Initially, we comforted him. We assured him that he was part of the group and that no one was being replaced. But it kept happening. Like every single time we were having fun, he would bring up the same issue. We encountered this on a random Tuesday. Then he began targeting weirdo number 2, my best friend. She had not done anything. She was merely enjoying the moment with the rest of us. But suddenly, Darnell made her feel like she was the villain, as if somehow she was stealing Samuel from him. Like, what the heck? It was subtle at first, but it grew manipulative. He wanted to control how things unfolded and could not handle anyone else being close to Samuel or even being too happy without his approval. That is when we all began to realize this was not just about insecurity, it was toxic. Then came the jokes. Darnell started making comments in the group chat like shipping weirdo number 2 and Samuel together. I mean, weirdo number 2 is aromantic asexual and Samuel is openly gay. So these jokes were not only misplaced, they were also disrespectful. It seemed he was trying to create drama that did not exist just to make things awkward and disrupt everyone's vibe. After the wedding chaos, Darnell did not stop. He continued acting as though Samuel was slipping away from him, claiming he did not even know him anymore. However, the reality is that Samuel believes Darnell is simply overreacting. He has been acting far too dramatic, and honestly, it feels like he cannot accept that Samuel has not changed. He is still the same person. Darnell persisted in being manipulative and toxic, attempting to make everything about himself, even when it had nothing to do with him. He would vent to his other friend, Michael, about everything happening at school, making it appear as if everyone was against him when, in fact, he was merely overthinking and twisting things to fit his narrative. It reached a point where it was obvious Darnell was venting to Michael to seek sympathy, and Michael, who was unaware of the full story, just played along. Darnell was attempting to manipulate the entire situation, and Michael did not even realize he was being drawn into the drama. But Samuel simply could not understand. He kept telling Darnell that he was overreacting and that nothing was changing, but Darnell did not want to hear it. He kept pushing, seeking more attention, and trying to make people feel bad for him. The entire situation felt exhausting and toxic, and eventually everyone began distancing themselves from him due to how much he kept dragging it out. So after everything that transpired, we all decided that Darnell and Samuel would have a divorce or annulment. I'm not exactly sure how it works in real life, but based on what I understand, if you're married for about 4 days or something, there is a chance for an annulment, right? Therefore, in our little wedding scenario, we made it happen. They got divorced. However, it did not go as smoothly as we had anticipated. The problem arose when I became Samuel's lawyer in the divorce, and Darnell was being all dramatic about it. Here is where things get even messier. Michael, the guy Darnell was venting to, decided he would be Darnell's lawyer. The issue was that Michael was very much about the sympathy angle. He was only supporting Darnell because he did not want to see him hurt or upset, but he did not know the full story. I had to keep my composure as Samuel's lawyer, while Michael was trying to gain all this sympathy from Darnell, and I was over here trying to maintain order. So while Michael was busy acting as the supportive lawyer, I had to work hard for Samuel's side of the case. It felt like Darnell and Michael were only escalating the drama, making it more challenging for us to focus on actually resolving anything. The whole situation felt like a farce, but in a way, it also served as the final straw that made us all recognize just how toxic everything had become. Story 4. I manipulated Savannah's boyfriend into breaking up with her and sabotaged her job hunt, ensuring she had no prospects. If she gets hired, I'll resign, I told my boss. Now, years later, she's estranged from her family and still struggling. Do I regret it? Not at all. This event occurred quite some time ago, but I have never felt comfortable discussing it without fearing judgment, so here I am. All names are fictional, although the story is so specific that if anyone involved comes across it, they will undoubtedly recognize it. I am just hoping that the statute of limitations has expired by now. I was raised in a very small town in the South, and when I was in high school, approximately during my junior year, I found myself in the same friend group as Savannah. She was a year older than the rest of us and was the only person in the group with whom I had an issue. Everyone else was fantastic. Now, one thing you should understand about me is that I dislike conflict, so when I began to realize how unpleasant Savannah was as a person, I did not confront her. I figured I only had one more year with her, and after she graduated, I would not have to interact with her any longer. Additionally, I did not wish to create any problems with the other wonderful members of the friend group. Given the small size of our school, about 30 students per graduating class, it was highly likely that I would run into her again if we were at odds. I was complicit and cowardly, and I feel extremely guilty for not speaking up, especially now that I am aware of the full extent of the troubling things she has done. First and foremost was her general unlikability. The conversations always had to revolve around her. No one else could discuss their issues because Savannah undoubtedly had something worse happening in her life. You could never share anything positive that occurred for you, as it would come across as an attempt to gloat in Savannah's face. You could never discuss your interests because they were boring and Savannah did not want to hear about them. And so it went. All of this was irritating, but it was far from being the worst aspect. Savannah would describe herself as a little boy crazy. I would characterize her as a creep. She consistently pursued younger boys. Most of the boys she dated in high school were 2 years younger than her, but at least a couple were 3 years younger, which is not a significant age gap but is definitely odd in a high school context. In my view, a 2-year difference in high school would be acceptable if it were not part of such a clear pattern for her. She seemed to exhibit controlling behavior in most of her relationships, but I only know about 2. The first is Jordan, who had been dating one of our other friends. Savannah began dating him almost immediately after he broke up with the other friend. She strongly disliked when anyone, and I mean anyone, spoke to him. If any of us complimented him, even noting that he did well on an assignment, she would either burst into tears, yell at us accusingly, or do both. One time, while we were shopping, she spotted him chatting with an older woman who was likely a relative, and she began crying, expressing her disdain for him talking to other girls and claiming he must have been doing it on purpose to upset her, which is quite alarming. Ultimately, he broke up with her and started telling others that she was crazy. However, for some reason, she was convinced that she and Jordan were destined to be together again. She repeatedly asserted that they were soulmates and spoke as if they had already reconciled. At this point, her troubling behavior became much more apparent to most of us, but we were unsure whether we should confront her or how to approach the situation. Instead, we would nod along during her rants and respond with, "Okay, Savannah, calm down." Eventually, she began leaving classes to go to the bathroom, only to wander down the hall past whatever classroom Jordan was in, so she could gaze at him through the small windows in the doors. Moreover, she openly mentioned that this is what she was doing, which is extremely odd. On one occasion, she left a party because she spotted someone entering a nearby store who vaguely resembled Jordan. Eventually, her behavior escalated to the point where she followed him home several times until his parents threatened to file a restraining order, at which point she backed off. I am amazed that anyone continued to be friends with her at that point, but I suppose we were all afraid of upsetting her. Regardless, I feel ashamed for remaining in her company. After that, she began dating another boy named Ryan. She had asked his older brother to attend homecoming with her, but he declined, so she turned to Ryan instead. Ryan was a sophomore while his brother was a junior. Throughout her relationship with Ryan, she referred to him with terms such as buddy and kiddo, which makes me want to gag. She exhibited much of the same possessive and controlling behavior, and I became increasingly worried for Ryan's well-being as he appeared very uncomfortable around her. On one occasion, he expressed to her that he felt uneasy about the level of physical contact she was displaying and asked her to reduce it. She came into the next class sobbing, claiming that her boyfriend found her creepy and clingy. They attended prom later in the year, and she attempted to sit in his lap, but he told her he would prefer not to. She was crying in the bathroom, and I comforted her but later reached out to Ryan privately. I shared all the details regarding her behavior with Jordan. He already knew the general story since everyone in my hometown is aware of everything about everyone, and showed him a picture of her holding the sign she made to invite his older brother to homecoming, which he apparently had not known about. I advised him to break up with her and make it abundantly clear that he did not wish to get back together with her. I also suggested that he inform his parents in case something occurred similar to the situation with Jordan. The next day, he ended the relationship with her, and she was distraught. Fortunately for us, not for her, her parents soon took away her car and phone, stating that she would regain them once she secured employment. Her parents had been providing her with a generous allowance for most of her life, but had reportedly warned her for a few years that she would soon need to find a job. According to her accounts, she had told them that she would not seek one because she wanted to have free time, which prompted them to take away her possessions. At that time, I had been working at my job, a retail position in the next town over that paid reasonably well for about a year. I obtained the job through a recommendation from a friend I had met at summer camp, and Savannah was aware that they took recommendations very seriously. When her job hunt was unsuccessful, she informed me she intended to apply for my job and requested that I recommend her to my manager. I said I would discuss it with the higher-ups and was courteous to her, but when I next went to work, I asked my manager if I could speak to him privately. I informed him that someone named Savannah might be applying soon and that she would disrupt the supportive environment he and every other employee had worked diligently to cultivate. I stated that I was so certain of this that if she were hired, I would submit my resignation immediately. As you might imagine, she was not offered a position. It turned out this job opportunity was her last chance, and she did not find employment for the remainder of her senior year. I heard that when she left for college, her parents told her that she was no longer welcome in their home due to her irresponsibility and untrustworthiness. I have no idea if this is true. According to another friend from the group, she returned to town and sought an invitation to prom several years after her graduation. I do not really care because I am currently on the opposite side of the country from her and do not have to deal with her anymore. Nevertheless, she is a repulsive person, and I feel ashamed for having tolerated her for such an extended period. I effectively ruined her life behind her back, and no matter how many times I attempt to feel guilty, I do not.